children and everyone who has tuned in. I'm Emma from Art Science Museum. We are very happy to have you with us today for the first session of Let's Talk About. Over the last couple of months, all of our lives have changed in many ways. We can no longer play with our friends, have big family gatherings, go to playgrounds, or even go to school like we were used to. Like many other museums around the world, Art Science Museum had to keep our doors closed for a little while to keep you and everyone around safe. But now in phase 2, the museum doors are open, but we will continue to meet you online to stay connected with you. That's why it's really exciting for us to have all of you here today for this session. Let's Talk About is part of the many programs that are available online with Art Science at Home for you to enjoy. Through many exciting workshops, virtual tours, and performances, you can learn how to make your own crafts, tour Art Science Museum, or even watch performances in the comforts of your own homes. Let's Talk About aims to address the questions that have always been on your minds, but you were unable to find answers for. For instance, have you ever wondered how the few that you walk past every day while on your way to school can become HDB buildings in just a few years? Who are these super builders to help make Singapore to who we are today? Where do they stay? How are they like? Why do we not see them around our homes? Let's find out more today by talking about the people who helped build Singapore. Discover about their lives in Singapore and how we can make them feel welcome and show our appreciation towards them. Today's session will include an introduction by a guest speaker, followed by a craft session where we could get together to make appreciation cards before ending with a Q&A session. Right now, we are live on YouTube and Facebook, so please feel free to pop questions or thoughts that you have always been on your mind in the chat box below so they can be answered later on. Now let's hear a bit more from my friend Renita, who is the co-founder of the COVID-19 Migrant Workers Coalition and part of the Birthday Collective. Renita, please.
Thanks, Emma. And hi, everyone. My name is Renita, and I'm one of the co-leads in the COVID-19 Migrant Support Coalition. Allow me to bring you through some quick slides so that you can find out a little bit more about what we have been doing with our migrant worker friends. The COVID Migrant Support Coalition is a group of Singaporean volunteers, but also volunteers from our migrant worker friends. And we work together with the government and many other groups to help the migrant workers during this very difficult time. How have all of you been during this COVID time? I'm sure it must be a little bit difficult. Sometimes you may not be able to go to school, or you may not be able to go and play with your friends. Just like you, many of our migrant worker friends have also had to stay in the dormitories, and they have not been able to go out. Hence, the COVID Migrant Support Coalition and other groups have come forward to try to help a little bit more. So what do you know about our migrant worker friends? Do you know how many migrant workers are in Singapore? A few 100,000 or a bit more? Wow, it could be almost 1 million? You're right. The number is about that. There are almost 800,000 at least foreign workers in Singapore, with at least 300,000 that stay in the dormitories. Dormitories are the big houses that they live in. And so you really have migrant workers that are everywhere, all around us, in many jobs, just like all of us in Singapore and our neighbors and our family and friends. Our migrant workers are also part of our society. And what kind of jobs do they do? Have you seen our migrant workers do these brave jobs, such as, building our buildings, construction skyscrapers, all the way to the sky? They do really difficult jobs and keep our society clean and safe for all of us, cutting trees and really helping in all kinds of jobs all around the island. They are really a big part of our Singaporean society. And where do our migrant friends live? Our migrant friends live just around us, like all of us, but in community spaces or much more cramped spaces at times. So, for example, they have to share their room with many people. They may not have a single room to themselves. And therefore, our migrant workers sometimes have to really learn how to share and do many things with many people around them, many of the people they work with. Also, they don't have always that much free time, but if they do, they would like to play sports and play just like you and I, as well as they like to take picnics and, just spend some free time in the parks and at the beach. So just like all of us, our migrant worker friends have contributed a lot to our community. We have seen many brave acts with many of them. Really, they are part of our community. They have helped us in many ways with many types of jobs, and they are very much part of us in the way that they contribute to our society as well, never afraid to lend a helping hand. So, what has happened during this COVID period for our workers? We know that this COVID period has been difficult for many of us, but especially for the workers, many of them have had to stay in their rooms. And like we showed earlier, their rooms may have many people within the room where they have to share the spaces, the toilets, the kitchen with one another. And so it is quite difficult because in these situations, the disease can spread quickly, right? And they can fall sick. So, with them being able to fall sick, what happens is that a lot of the doctors, the nurses, and many others have come forward to try to put them through medical tests to make sure that they are feeling well, to take care of them, and to try to keep them company within the dormitories or the housing that they stay. But there are so many of them. And because there are so many of them working hard in a country like Singapore and having to stay in these spaces, they have also felt many different emotions during this period of time. How do you think they are feeling at this point of time? Are they feeling happy or sad? You're right. They have been feeling all of these emotions. They have been feeling a bit worried. They are scared whether they are a little bit sick. They are grateful that they are being taken care of. They are happy at times, but they are also sad and also worried and uncertain, not sure about their jobs for the future. So, amidst all of these various things, because it has been quite a number of weeks and months, and we are not sure when the COVID period will end, many of them continue to be a little bit anxious about what the days ahead bring. So, what have we as Singaporeans been doing during this period of time? The COVID Migrant Support Coalition, along with many other groups, have been providing some essential services for the workers. So, for example, the government does provide meals to some of the bigger dormitories, and the volunteer organizations also provide meals and other supplies to the other dormitories, many of the medium sized dormitories, as well as those staying in some of the private apartments. Of course, their bosses also take care of them, but because there is so much to be done, many Singaporeans have to also chip in. And it could be simple things like providing toilet paper or providing a toothbrush, so all kinds of things where, things that we take for granted that we can easily go out and buy. For them, they have to stay within the dormitory, within their rooms, and therefore, many things have to be brought to them. So some of our supplies you can see we have to bring them even toothpaste or simple things like pails to bathe in as they share many different as they share their toilets. And you can see even sometimes some biscuits or snacks, things that we take for granted, but that they really look forward to and appreciate when we share with them. So amidst all this, also because they are feeling a bit stressed, we also know that, have you heard of the exercise called yoga? We try to do exercises like yoga and other kinds of mental relaxation programs to help comfort them a little bit and help make them feel that they're not so alone. During this period of time, we also have a special initiative which we call WePals. So WePals is a special program where you can actually write letters to a migrant worker friend, and they can write back to you. So you can be a pen pal. Okay, you can match yourself up with a migrant worker friend, and you can share information with each other. You can ask each other how you are feeling. You can talk about how is your day, and you can find out more about each other's countries and languages as well. So, beyond all this, there are also a lot of critical work that continues with doctors, nurses, and counselors continuing to go down to the dormitories and assist the workers and the employers to make sure that the workers and everyone is okay and that things are going on all right. And we also deliver masks during this period of time to many of the workers that have to stay together in closed conditions. Of course, not forgetting, some of you may remember, just a while back we had special occasions like Mother's Day, or you had Father's Day, or you even have special religious occasions like Hari Raya. So if you're Muslim, and many of the workers are Muslim as well, they would actually celebrate something called Hari Raya. So during the earlier period, they would have to fast, which means they can't eat for a long period of time. And then at the end of the day, they get to sit together as a community and break fast, and then they will share some food with each other at the end of the long day. However, unlike you and me, where we celebrate special occasions with our family and friends around us, many of them are not near their family. Their family are back home, they are not with their wife or their children, and they miss their family. They are not able to celebrate with many of their friends, and so they are only able to celebrate in their rooms. So we do simple things like encourage them to write poetry and cards and to remember their family during this period of time. Of course, the big question then is, even with these basic things that we are helping them with, what more can each of us do? So, some of the simple things that we can do is simply to just listen, find out, and know more about the migrant workers, and then to share that message with all of our family and friends, to share with them what we know about what the migrant workers are going through during this tough period of COVID times. We can also share with them about why they need help during this period of time and what more can be done. Some of your parents might also want to, for example, volunteer or donate some monies, which will help with the food and the supplies that go towards these workers, especially in these difficult times and uncertain times about their jobs as well. You might also want to be a pen pal, so you can write letters to them. And of course, you can also share the word on social media if you have Facebook, Instagram, and most importantly, but definitely not the least, is to be kind to them. Anytime you see a migrant worker around us, remember that they are just like any of part of our society. They have contributed a lot, and give them respect, be kind, give a smile, say hello, and remember to continue to be kind to them always. So with that, thank you for listening to a little bit of our sharing about our migrant worker friends today, and I'd like to pass the time back to the Art Science Museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Renita. The current situation had made many of us develop a renewed sense of gratitude and appreciation to the people who helped build Singapore. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce another friend of mine, Dina, who will be doing appreciation cards together with you to express our thanks and gratitude to the migrant communities. While we're doing the cards, if there are any questions that pop up, please feel free to put them in the chat box below. Dina, please.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, kids. Now that you've sat through the sharing earlier about migrant workers, shall we give a little word of encouragement to them by making some of these cards? Let's get crafty with some very simple hands-on activity. So they are really easy to do. You could use magazines, or you could even use any coloring or writing materials that you have at home. So let's start with the one using magazine cutouts. If you see a magazine lying around, when you see a page, if you like rainbow, if you find a page with rainbow colors, make sure you catch the rainbow, cut the page out. Or any pages with fancy or cool designs. And what you do is simply fold it into half, like this, and cut out the parts that you want the color to show. So I want this very fancy bicycle over here with the bright pink, and cut funny shapes, irregular shapes, zigzag shapes. So when you're done cutting, you will find that when you cut from the fold, it comes out like that. You get a really, really huge shape. And what I have prepared over here is just a simple card that's folded into two. I like blue, so I folded into two, and you can choose however way you want the card to fold out. So your message can come on here, or I want my card to open this way. All right, so I've also used other colored paper as well. So with all these irregular shapes, you can stick them down and then write your note on the paper. But not to worry, what would happen to all of this scrap magazine cutouts? Just have another colored paper cut out at the side, because what you could do is you could layer it and immediately you get another card that you could write to our migrant worker friends. Just fold it in the middle like that and you can write your message in the card. But if you like doodling like me, all you need to do is have your paper ready and you can play with lines. Ziggly or funny lines, fast lines. You can also draw dashed lines. You can hold 2 markers in your hand and go crazy, really. Remember, we are writing a card to say thank you, so make it as cheerful as possible, and you can leave a space just to write your thank you message. So what I've done here also is that you can use different colored markers and challenge yourself. Make sure the marker does not leave the paper, or you can even go crazy with other patterns and designs. So what I've done here is really with coloring pencils, I've scribbled away, and the message really is to say thank you to our migrant worker friends. So after making all your amazing cards, you can send them over to Art Science Museum. We will leave the address at the comment box because we also work very closely with our good friends at the Birthday Collective. And Sherry, who is in charge of the Encouragement Card Project, has been working on it, and she has created with her family and her friends, they've created more than 6,000 handwritten cards for our migrant worker friends. So a little message. I think it's really important for us to be thankful for the little things that we have in life and to be grateful to the people all around us. So don't forget to smile or wave and say hello or thank you to our migrant worker friends when you see them. Thank you for joining me in today's very easy craft session, and we hope to see you again next time. I will now hand the time back to Emma. Emma, please.
Thank you, Dina. Let us invite Renita back for the Q&A session. Hi, Renita. We already have a couple of questions that's coming from the audiences, and a few of them with a similar topic, which is generally about what are some of the possible ways we can help migrant workers to have higher wage and to find better job opportunities. Renita, I think you're on mute.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you hear me now? That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks, Emma. That's a really good question to start with. I think that some of us know that the migrant workers don't earn such high wages, such high salaries. So it is said from some of the surveys, they only earn a little bit around $500 on average for many of the migrant workers. And of course, while it might seem a lot to some back home in their countries, they still have to pay for many things along the way just to get to Singapore for their day-to-day needs within Singapore, and then for them to save a little bit just to send back home. So you're right, they don't get paid so much, and it would be good to be paid a little bit more. But part of the reason why it's sometimes difficult to pay a bit more is because the employers are sometimes trying to compete for deals in business. And of course, they have to pay for many other fees. So it is sometimes a difficult situation for businesses as well as workers to kind of compromise and find a position that is better for each side. And definitely, we do hope that in coming days, this will be looked into and migrant workers can be paid a little bit more so that it will be a little bit easier for them.
That's really heartwarming to hear. Thank you. We have another question from Flint asking, how has the situation with COVID-19 changed the lives of migrant workers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think COVID has affected many of us. If you saw from some of the slides that we showed earlier, I think for all of us, at times we can't go out, we can't meet our friends so easily, and so on. But I think really for the workers, already they are in a different country, far away from their home, and they are very used to working really hard, and now suddenly they are in a room shared with many other people, sometimes 10 people, 20 people, or even more. And because of that, that's really a lot of people, right? So they do find it quite difficult. They don't have a lot of the things that we take for granted. They don't have air conditioning. They can't just go out to buy their food or get food delivered. So they just have some of their basic meals. They don't really have all these snacks or an apple or fruits or things that you just want to easily get. So it has been quite difficult for them during this period of time. It's a big change, and because it's also going on for quite a number of weeks, we definitely feel for the workers very much. And many Singaporeans and others are trying to step forward to help them during this difficult period of time.
It's really good to hear all this gone out initiative that come up to help the migrant workers with all the support groups and even mental health and all the mental awareness for the migrant workers. It's really nice that your group is doing all these things as well. Another question from Atlas. He's asking if migrant workers, do they actually miss their families?
Wow, that's a good question, Atlas. Yeah, I think definitely the workers really, really miss their families. Even in normal times, whatever little time that they have at the end of their work day, they will call home and spend some time trying to talk to their family. And their families do worry about them a lot during this period of time, during this COVID time especially. So they definitely miss their family a lot, especially when they are little. They have even more time now to think about their families and to think about what their families are doing back home. They do miss their parents, their wives, their kids during this period of time. And of course, especially as we said earlier today, like even during special occasions, but also it could be simple things like a birthday. But also, I think overall, because there are many things that are also happening back home in their own countries. In some of the countries in South Asia, like Bangladesh and India, there are even these big cyclones, storms that are going on. So it's a mixture of worry as well as missing their families that is happening right now. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. It's really good that there's a technology now to help them connect back with their families as well. Imagine like maybe 20 years ago, it would be really tough.
True.
So one of the question for Kit, who is 6 this year, is asking how can the bosses take better care of their workers?
Wow, these kids are asking really good questions.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that there are a lot of bosses that do care a lot for their workers, and they are trying to provide whatever is needed during this time. So it could be food, definitely housing, even though it's in the dormitories, they are trying to provide a number of these things. But the bosses are also going through very difficult times, as many of us know. In Singapore, it's actually quite a tricky time for business because a lot of business has slowed down, and a lot of them, their projects, the construction projects or the other projects they are brought here for, have been stopped for quite a number of almost 2 months or more than 2 months now. So because of that, the bosses really do also find it hard to provide a bit more for the workers, and they're also struggling with paying their own other workers as well as just to continue with the project. So definitely, I think bosses can try to understand their workers a little bit better. They can reach out to suppliers and volunteer groups for more help, but they can also step up a little bit more in seeing how to understand their workers and encourage their workers during this difficult period of time. But we also must not forget to also be understanding and encouraging towards the bosses as well during this difficult period of time for them as well.
Yeah, and I think the government is doing quite a bit to help the employers and employees as well in this situation. We have two questions actually from Time Out Smarties. First question is they're asking what happens during phase 1 and phase 2 for migrant workers, and what will happen when a migrant worker is declared COVID-19 free during phase 2? Like, will they be able to go out as per normal, like their usual practice?
Yeah, so I think for phase one, I think like many of us in Singapore, we have had to stay at home and we can't really go out. And so the workers also have had to stay in their rooms. But unlike many of us, they spend quite a lot of time quite worried because not just on their jobs, but also in terms of, whether they are sick in the first place because they are living in very close quarters with one another. And so there were a lot of medical tests, a lot of changes that kept happening, and some of them had to move out of their dormitories. They were brought from to different places to another place to be tested and to live in different spaces. So many of them have been going through quite a difficult time, even in phase one. But now that hopefully things will slowly get a little bit better, they know that they are being taken care of, and hopefully that things will be slowly a little bit improved for them. During phase two, they are still staying within the dormitories, but for the dormitories where all the workers are declared COVID free, no one has COVID, and everybody should be quite okay. They may be allowed to go back to work slowly, but they may not be able to go out like you and I. They still might only be able to go to work, and then they have to come back to the dormitory. So it's still quite a difficult period of time for them. They still have to be very careful, and they are taking many measures. They are very concerned about their health, actually, and they are constantly looking and reading up on how they can keep themselves healthy and safe during this period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So with this, right, I was just wondering, with the government bringing the situation under control. One of our viewer is actually asking how Anita is actually asking how will their families be supported if the workers are still ill during this whole period as well.
Right. So I mean, because they are working in another country here in Singapore, there may not be so much direct help that we can give to the families, but we do try to help the workers themselves. Hopefully, at the very least, they must be healthy and safe. That's the first thing we need to take care of, that they are healthy and safe because they have come here to work in Singapore. And then secondly, hopefully that many of them will be able to return to their jobs and get a certain amount of their salaries as well, so that they can continue to send back some of this money back home, which can then help their families. Of course, like we mentioned earlier, things like Wi-Fi is now being provided in many of the rooms. So hopefully it's a little bit easier for them to speak to their family back home. And many of them do want to continue to work here and work hard. And they are looking forward to going back to their work as well.
That's really nice. So actually, the question coming up is something maybe more personal. So I remember when I was a child, it was a really common sight to see migrant workers around my housing estate. However, with the shifting of the dorms to like away from where we stay, we no longer see them as often as before. And the only time when we really get to see them is when they're doing maintenance or upgrading works. So this also probably means that the children now may not be even aware of the presence of migrant workers in Singapore. I'm wondering, as for your nieces and your nephews, what are some of the practices you have done to create awareness or even expose them to the migrant communities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you're right, Emma. That many times I think many of us, we are so busy with our lives, going to school, going to play with our friends or visit our families, and we sometimes forget that these migrant workers are here not just for a few months. Some of them are here for many years. Could be even 10 years. Many of them actually are here for many years, and so they do miss their family, their friends while they are here. And so it is very good, whenever anyone tries to speak to them or treat them well,
Mm,
they are very grateful. So I think some of the things that, even with some of my friends' kids or nephews or nieces that, that we have done is simple things like, what Dina showed earlier, drawing cards, for example. So Sherry with the Birthday Collective, they have a very good card initiative where they drew these cards during this COVID period of time, and we actually helped to also distribute some of these cards, and we received some of the messages after our migrant friends received the cards. Simple messages like "Stay strong." don't worry, we are here for you. And even though, every day we are, there may be food or other things that are delivered to them, I think when they receive this card, this is something that doesn't just disappear in a single day. This is a card that, it remains with them throughout this whole period. And I think many of them were very encouraged. They really appreciate small things like this. There are also others who can do simple projects. We have another friend, Rowena, and her kids, who also they did a tie-dye project. So they basically painted, a cloth, and they sold it and tried to raise some money, some of these tie-dye t-shirts, and they raised a few $100s and they gave that to the migrant workers. So I think, there is really no limit in how we can help them better. It's just understanding them better, not forgetting them on special occasions, trying to speak up more for them, and trying to get them included as part of our society. I think this will really go a long way to show our Singapore spirit, our Singapore kindness, and the true warmth of our Singaporean community to them as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think this whole situation really brought we really have to be appreciative of what the migrant workers have done for us in Singapore. It's really like look out of the window, everything is probably done by them, maintenance work, upgrading works, everything. So we have actually a last question from the ground and grouping a couple of them together. It's actually talking about the wages, which you had mentioned earlier. What are some of the things that can be done to actually help look at increasing their wages, their minimum wage in Singapore?
Yeah, I think this is a really big question in terms of what can be done. I think many, 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 different groups are looking at this question to see what can be done. So, of course, it is a question of, partly whether, the companies or the government, and whether Singaporeans themselves are willing to pay a little bit more so that our workers, also can earn a little bit more. It does involve many of us having to speak up. It does involve having to create a lot more awareness. So it starts with small steps like that, creating the awareness, the understanding first of what is the real situation, how can we help more, and then slowly looking into the different ways in which we can try to ensure that, more of what we pay for goes towards the workers. I think that will really
Right.
help. The workers who are here, they are very grateful. I mean, many of them don't usually ask for more. I think most of them are, usually even when we distribute food or when we provide anything, we see that even if there is a second helping, someone asks, you want a bit more, they will say no, because to them, even if you give them a little bit, they are quite grateful. But having said that, I think they are very, very concerned about their jobs and the salaries. And of course, if we can try to increase that amount, to give them
Mhm.
some dignity, to help them a little bit more, I think they will be even more grateful. And I think as a Singaporean society, this is also the least that we can do, and what we really want to help them with as well.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. So actually, before we conclude on this, right, I'd like to close up the Q&A with a question that's really probably on the minds of the educators or parents who are tuned in today. So in your experience, what are some of the recommendations to follow up with the conversation after this session to ensure that there's a continuity in our children to pay attention to the people who are not as visible in our community?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And actually, the first way to start is really can really be quite small. I think for many of us, watching this video itself is a big first step. Really just understanding who are the migrant friends during this COVID time. All of us are going through many different things, but what are our migrant friends going through, and why do we need to care for them? And once we understand that, we can also share this video and many other similar resources, similar videos we can share with our friends, our family. We can encourage more people to understand the issues, to not forget that the migrant workers are really there right now. Also, in many dormitories around Singapore, they are there, concerned, worrying a little bit about their jobs, and they are very grateful if we step forward and treat them as part of our community. But of course, in bigger ways, it's just giving a smile, providing a helping hand, lending a helping hand, and trying to do small things like the art and craft initiative, and maybe even sharing the message with our friends at school, and the rest of our relatives as well. So I think that really would be an amazing thing if our kids could really go forth with that message, and lead projects even within their schools. I think we'll be really encouraged by that, and it shows the amazing potential of our children as well with their kind hearts.
That's really nice. And I think having children to smile at adults melts everyone's hearts, right?
Definitely. I think definitely, yes.
Yeah. So thank you for your time to share with us today. And thank you, Dina, for the craft session. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we have to wrap up today's session. We are a bit overrun. And a big thank you to everyone who's tuned in today for all your questions and your comments. This is one of the many programs we are presenting for Art Science at Home, with many more lined up in the coming months. Please stay tuned to our website, Facebook, and Instagram for more information. We have now come to the end of the session. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.